Hello and welcome back to the Django blog series. This is part 3. So in part 2 we created a comment system for our blog, and now we're going to create a category system. So previously, like I said, we created in part 2 a simple comment system where we had the name, email and comment, and that allowed users to make comments about our posts. So we're now going to extend this a little bit further in this tutorial and create some categories. So we're going to categorize our posts, and then we're going to make them available in for example, a drop-down menu so that we can display the different post types or categories on a single page, and then the viewer can select which post they want to visit. So the flow of this tutorial, we're going to cover building a new model for the categories and create a foreign key between the post table and the category table. And then we're going to delve into a little bit of class-based generic views. So hopefully you'll start seeing some of the power underneath the bonnet of Django by utilizing class-based generic views. You'll see that you'll need to write less, but things are a little bit more abstract. You need to know about the view in order to work with it. But once you understand it, it does mean that you're essentially writing less code. So within this tutorial also, there'll be a number of different queries, and I'll try and use some different filters for you to become familiar with some of the different options or filters that are available for models and collecting data from our database. And then we're going to cover custom template processors. So I just wanted to give you an example of, in this case, creating a simple view for our category drop-down menu, and we want to make that view available globally throughout our whole application. So instead of repeating or adding the same content in many places in our Django templates, we can write context processors to make it globally available for use in all templates. So I'm going to give you that example in this tutorial, and then we'll go ahead and create our category pages and menu drop-down. You'll probably also notice, if you're following this blog series, that in part 2 everything looked a little bit raw. So I will, at the end of this tutorial, if you want to watch me do this, I'm just going to create what you saw in the preview there, a little bit more styling here for our posts. Okay, so that's what's going to be covered in this tutorial. So let's get building. So in this tutorial, we are building from the previous code that we developed. So I've head over to the GitHub repository here. So this is the simple blog at part 2. So we're going to need to download this first, create a new virtual environment and get this working. And then we're going to build from this. So you can go ahead and do that, and I'll see you in the next part. Else, if you stand by, I'll just take you through that. So I have linked this in the description. So once you go to a repository, we can download this. Of course, if you're familiar using Git, you can just pull this down. So I'm just going to download the zip for this. So once you've downloaded it, I've created a new folder here on my C drive, and I've extracted it. And this is the files that you should have. So I'm just going to open this up with my code editor. And now what we're going to need to do in the terminal is just create a new virtual environment for this. So py -m. So this is just going to create a new virtual environment. That should take a couple of seconds. There we go. And now we can just activate that. So you're probably already too familiar with this, or not. So now we've activated the virtual environment, and then the final step is that we just need to pip install Django. So there's no dependencies here. You'll notice that there isn't a need to install anything else at this moment. Obviously, as we go through this series, we'll add some different modules, dependencies, etc. Okay, so once that's done, we can now start a server and just make sure that it's working. Okay, so py, let's run the server. So there shouldn't be any need for you to create the database, etc. So you can see that our project is running, and we'll go back into our blog now, and you'll notice that it changes. So if I head over to the admin, the username is admin, the password is admin, and you can see I've got some posts and the comment system from the previous tutorial. Okay, so now the project has started, or we started the project and it's working okay. Let's now start by building our model. Okay, so we're going to head over to the blog app here. So remember that the blog app is our main app which we work within, and then the My Sites is the main project application folder. So inside of here we have models. I'll just get rid of that, we don't need that. So our model.py file. So just drop that down. So you can see here that we've already created some models in the previous tutorials. Comments was the last model we made. So now we're going to make a category model. So what we need to do here then is we've got posts. So the post should have some sort of connection between the post table and the category table, because we're just storing category names in this case in the category table. So we're going to need to make a foreign key between the post and the category table so that we can link the two tables together. So let's go ahead and just create a simple category table. So I'm just going to call this category. And then as per normal, we're just going to extend from models.model. So this is going to be a really simple model. All we really need here is the name of the category. So we're going to just create some categories and just define the name. So this is going to be a character field, and we just give that a max length of probably around about 50 or 100. There we go. Okay, so that's pretty much it. That's pretty much all that we need to do here for the category table. So the problem we got here is that we've already got data within our post table. So if I were to now to create a foreign key between the post and the category, then that could cause potential problems, or it just makes it more difficult to make this model, because there has to be something inside of the post and there has to be something inside the category. And at the moment, there are no categories. So we can't really make that link between the post table and the category table. So because we're working on a live database, in this case, it's probably best for us to just migrate and set the category table first, build some categories, and then go ahead and create our connection or our foreign key between the post table and the category table. So let's go ahead and go to the admin page. So what we're going to do here is just make our new model available in the admin area so that we can add some categories. So I just type in admin site register and then models. So we're importing all the models up the top here. So we want to access the category model. So that should be there. Okay. So now that's in place, what we can now do is just head over to the terminal, and we're just going to migrate that. So py. So make migrations, and then we'll migrate that. Okay, so now we have the model available. It's not connected yet to our post model here. So now what we can go back into our system and just refresh. Oh, it's not on. So let's just go back into our code. We turn the server off. So run the server again. So we can now go into the admin area. So remember, the admin username and password is admin. And now you can see the categories table here. So let's go inside of here and we'll add a category. So what we're going to do is we're going to set a new category called default. So that's just the default category for any post that we generate. Maybe we forget to add it to a category, or we're not too sure yet. So we're going to need to add it to something. So therefore we create a default category so that all posts by default will be part of the default category, and then we can change it as we wish. So we'll just save that. You can see it says category object 1. And the reason why that is because we've not set a default output for it. So for example, here we set the default return name. So we can do that here. So let's do self name. So that should just return the name of the category. So now when I refresh the page here, you can see it now says default instead of what was there before, which didn't make any sense, or it was harder to understand what we're looking at. Okay, so now we've got the default output there. We can now see that we've got our category. So let's now head it back into our model. So what we're going to do now is create a foreign key between the post here and the category, so that when we add something to or add a new post, we can now connect it to a category within our category table. So underneath the title here, say, let's go ahead now and do that. So we're going to call this category. That's going to be model.foreignkey. And we are going to remove that. So we want to now first define the table on which we are trying to create a foreign key for. So that was the category table. And then what we want to do is define onDelete. Okay, so this is important to understand, this onDelete here. So let's just go for an example. We've created a category. We've got lots of categories and they're connected to posts. So there has to be a connection here between our post model and our category model, because we're creating a foreign key. So we can't make a new post unless we give it a category or define or assign a category to it. So if we were to delete a category, it would mean that potentially we could break our database, because our posts will be connected or be pointing to a category which doesn't exist anymore if we were to delete a category. So the onDelete here defines what we should do to the post if we delete a category. So imagine we create a new post X and we give it category Y. So imagine we've got 100 posts that are connected to category Y. So if we were to delete category Y, we need to do something with the posts. So there's a few different options that we can do. So this is a little bit wordy, but it's for you to kind of pause and just read through. So there's 6 possible actions that we can take when we delete a connection to our foreign key. So we can have it cascade. So we can define cascade. So that means that when we delete the category, it means that it's also going to delete the objects that it's referenced to, which isn't necessarily a good idea in this case, because what it means, if we make some posts and they're all connected to category Y, and then we delete category Y, it potentially then will delete all the posts. So we don't want the post to be deleted. So we've got protect also. So this is going to forbid the deletion of our categories. So I think that's what I'm going to use in this instance. So I'm just going to avoid people being able to delete any of our categories. So we've got set null, which probably isn't very useful in this case, because we want our post to be connected to a category of some sort. So this is why I set up a default category. So by all means, have a little read through here. We're going to be utilizing protect, but these are 6 possible actions we can take when the category is deleted. Okay, so let's go back into the code. So let's just finish off this. So on delete, we said that we're going to protect. So models.protect. So what it means is that, like I said, if we try to delete a category, we're not going to be allowed to do so. So we've already defined a category, and that was default. If you remember, we created this default here. So that's going to have an ID of 1. So what we're going to do here is we're going to set a default category for all of our classes, and that default is going to equal 1. So that means that anytime we create a new post, the default category is going to be default, the word default, or the category default. What it also means is that any posts that we've already made, they're going to be assigned to the default, which is going to be the category default. And that's important too. And this is why we've taken the steps as we've done, because if we didn't have that in place, we'd have no category to connect to, if you remember. So this is why we made the categories first, or the categories table first. Okay, so now that's in place, we can now go ahead in our terminal and we can run the make migrations and then migrate. So error module blah has no attribute models. Okay, so I've done something wrong here. I've got the models twice. Okay, so let's go ahead and migrate that and make migration, sorry, and then migrate. Okay, so now let's just start the server. Okay, so we're just going to run this server and let's have a look at our database. So let's go back into our post and you can see I've got 1 post available and you can see it has the category of default. Okay, so now we have categories. So let's just go back into the blog section and create some more categories. So that we're going to need a new category. We're going to call this Django. And I'm going to create a category called View. So if I go back into my posts, I can now select Django from the drop-down. So this is going to be part of the Django category. And then I press save. So next up then, I need to create some sort of category page so that I can have a drop down here like I showed you in the preview, click on Django or View or whatever category, and then it shows me all the posts that are connected to that category. So that's the next task. So now we're going to go ahead and create a new view. So what we want to do here is we want to build a category page whereby we go to that category page and it shows us all the posts of a specific category. So let's go ahead and just import a list view from Django Views generic so we can use a class-based view. So what is this? So the next task then is for us to actually build a category page so that we can see specific posts from a specific category. So let's go over to the views and we're going to import list view so that we can use class-based views. So what is this? If you haven't already read the built-in class-based generic views from the Django documentation, it's a worthwhile read. Essentially here we're going to use class-based views, generic views. It takes a lot of the effort of having to describe everything within our code. So there's a lot of common things that we do in views that using these generic views we don't have to do. So it cuts down the amount of code that we need to define. Some say that it makes some things neater and tidier and more consistent throughout your views. So there are different types of generic views available. So again, just read through that. I'm not going to go through each one here. And there's some good examples to get you started using these generic views. So let's go back into the code. So we're going to use a list view here. And then we go to the bottom here. And now we're going to generate a new class-based view to extract the information from the database that's relevant to the URL. Okay, so what does that mean? So what we want to do is when someone types in, for example, category/Django, it's going to show all the Django posts. So we're going to be able to, in our view, extract the word Django essentially, and we're going to use that to query the database. So let's go ahead and create a new class-based view. So we're using list view. And here we're going to define some simple parameters. So the template name is going to be called category. So this is the HTML page that we're going to create in our templates. So that's what this view is going to be utilized on or for. And then we're going to need something called a context object name. So when we pass the data back into our template, we're going to need some sort of context name for that data. So we're going to be able to extract or collect that data on our template via the cat list keyword. So that's how we can access our data on our HTML page. We'll see that in a minute. Right, so we're going to need to create a kind of a custom query here. So first of all, we're going to need the category because I want to return the category to this template because I want to be able to capture that and use it so I can say this is all the Django posts or this is all the Vue posts. So I want to know what the category or I want to know what page that category list is for. So we're going to capture that and I'm going to call that cat and then the posts. So what I've done here, if we break this down slightly, let's just toggle that. You can see here that we've got post objects. So we're collecting all the data from the posts and now we're going to create a filter. So this filter here, we're going to filter by category name and that's going to be category. So we're collecting the actual category name from the URL essentially here, and we're putting it right there. So if you type in Django, then what's going to happen, we're going to filter all of the post objects, all of our posts inside of our database, and we're only going to extract out those posts that equal the category name, Django in this case, or default, or Vue. And then we're going to further filter it by status publish. So the actual post needs to be published in order to be displayed to the viewer. Okay, so that's the query essentially to extract that information. Now this is a little bit of abstract here because I've got category here randomly. So this is one of the benefits of using a class-based view in that we don't have to kind of define the get information because remember here we're creating a URL and we're trying to extract Django from it or whatever category we're looking at. So it's going to be easy to understand this once we can kind of see this more once we've created our URLs. But essentially the URL has some information in it. One of those items will be Django, and we're going to collect that information. So using the quags here, self quags. So this is essentially what's coming into this class is some properties, some parameters, and we're collecting that. And one of those parameters is going to be the name Django. We're going to collect that and utilize that to make our query against category. And that's going to filter out all the post items based upon the category name. So once we have that in place, we can now just return the content. And within this content, we're going to reference or collect the information within it via these kind of keywords here, cat and posts. So that wasn't too painful. Now we can go into the URLs. So we're going to need to make a new path for this. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create a new path called category. So in order to get into a category, someone actually has to type into the URL category. And then we want the actual category. So we're going to capture that category. So here we're going to capture the category, and that's what's going to be passed back. So this property here, if we go back into the view, is going to be captured in the view, and that's going to enter the view, and here we're going to capture that, and then that then allows us to then make the query against the table. So the category name needs to equal whatever that is, so Django or whatever we type in to our URL right here. So that's where we're making the connection there. So once we've done that, we're going to say views, and then it's going to be cat list view dot as view, and then we just give that a name. Oh, I can't see. We'll give that a name. Of category. There we go. Okay, so now that's done, we should now be able to go into our server. So let's just run that. So if we go back into the code, hopefully now, if we were to now type in, well, we know we've got Django, so we're category, and then Django, and we've got a problem here. Okay, so I had a little bit of a typo in line 9 here, so I've completed that. I've gone back, and now I've got template does not exist, because of course we haven't created a template. So now we need to go ahead and create a new template. So let's go back into our blog here and our templates, and we're going to create a new file. We're going to call that category.html. And let's just say hi, and let's go back and refresh the page, and you can now see our categories system is working. So we've got view as well. So now let's create a template for this to capture the information from our view. So let's just remember that from our view, we're sending back to our templates here this content information. Inside of here we have cat, which is the category name, and then also the posts. So all the posts that are connected to a specific category that we've defined in the URL. Okay, so let's go back to category. So there's quite a little bit here to do. So I'm just going to copy and paste this in and just take you through. So let's go through the category page. So here we're extending from the base. So we're using the base here, and this is where our block content is going to be on the base. So this is where we're going to add the category page. So now we've got the title. So we're going to overwrite the title in the base. We're going to call this a cat list or category XYZ. And then we're going to go ahead, and here we're using Bootstrap. So we're utilizing a container. Inside of this container, we've got a row, ends here. And then inside of this row, we're going to have a new container here for the cat list cat. So what's cat list cat posts? So list of cat list cat posts. So if we go back into the view, you can see here that we've got cat, and we've got cat list. So the context object name is where the data is being stored. So we need to reference that first, cat list. Inside of cat list, we've got cat. So we're saying go into the context object, and then go into the cat information, and then from there we can access the category name. So this is what we're doing here. Cat list cat, that's going to return what that's going to return, in this case, the category name. So let's just go back into here. So here is just going to say the category name for this particular category. Now we can go ahead and create our loop. So right here we've got this loop here. So for post in cat list.posts. So again, we're in cat list. So this is all the data, and then we're now accessing the post information. So this is the filter. So what we've got now is all the posts that are related to the particular category that we defined in the URL. And then from here, we're just going to extract out the post URL from the post like we've done before. In here, we've also got just a random image, placement image there. And what I've also done is that I've created a H2 with a inline style here just for now. And you can see here I've outputted the post title. But what I'm doing is I'm truncating the characters. So I'm limiting how many characters are being outputted, because what I want is a consistent look throughout all the different boxes. So I truncate it to 50, and I do the same to the excerpts. So that's post excerpt. Again, I've just truncated that to 50 characters. And then I've gone ahead, I've got some text down here which you can change and so on, but this is going to loop through, and for every post it's going to output the post with all this information. So the outcome, that should now be in place. The outcome, if I just refresh view, well, there aren't any view posts at the moment, but if I go to Django, there should be one post. So there should be one post. So it's not working at the minute. So let's have a look to see what's going on. But you can see here it says list of Django posts. So what was the problem? Why didn't it work? Well, what's happening here is that if you go back to the categories, if you're following this tutorial, you probably use capitals for the category. So the problem being here is that if I go back into the code, into the view, we're trying to filter by category name. Now in the URL, we're typing in category and then in this case Django. So that's the keyword that's being passed across to our view here. And here we're trying to make a filter. So we've got the case of lowercase and uppercase. So it's not being detected, or it's not being matched, because in the admin section we had a capital D, but in the URL obviously we're using a lowercase. So therefore nothing was being displayed. So just for simplicity, I've just gone back into my categories and I've just made sure that I'm utilizing lowercase. And that way we can make the match. So if I go back to category in Django, you can see I've now got my only and single post, which we defined as Django previously. So now we've got that in place. Let's go back to the blog and our posts, and let's just make a few more posts so that we can see different categories working. So I'm just going to make one more post. This is just a view, learn view. So I've just added this to admin, make sure it's published, and you've got the excerpt and the category. I press save. If you go back to the home page now, you can see you've got the two options. But obviously if I go to category and now if I go to view, I should now be able to see that. And there we go. So we've got the functionality working. So now what we need to do is add a nice little drop down button here so that we can access the different categories from a drop down. So here comes the custom template processors. So like I said before, instead of repeating or adding the same content in many places in your Django templates, you can write context processors to make it globally available for use in all templates. So here we're utilizing a navbar template from the base, and we're importing that into our different pages. So obviously that navbar is going to be available on all pages. So we want our navbar dropdown to be available on all places. So we're going to create a context processor to make that dropdown, that category dropdown, available on all pages. So that's just loosely speaking. You can probably see the advantage potentially of utilizing this in your project if you wanted to make something globally available on all templates. So let's just go ahead now and create this. So this is really simple. Let's just go over to the view. So we're going to create a new view, and essentially we're going to make that view available everywhere. So in our view, let's just create a new view. So I'm just going to call this category list, and then we're going to get all the categories from our categories object, our categories table. And here I'm going to use an exclude. So I'm going to exclude the name default because I don't want in my list, in my drop-down list, the category default. So I've excluded that. So this is essentially a query that's going to query all the categories from the category table and then output everything, put it into this variable category list, but it's going to exclude any category name default. So then I go ahead and create this context, category list, category list. So that's going to allow me to access the category list from the word category list. And then we just return this context. Okay, so I didn't need that, but I just added it there for you. So that's that done. So now I need to make this available. So first thing is I just need to make sure that this category model is available in the view here. So I just need to go at the top here and just make that available. So that model is now available to make that kind of query on the model. And now I need to go into my site folder, the main app folder, and go to settings. So inside of settings here, we have templates, and here you can see the context processors here. So what I want to do now is add my view to that. So this is really simple. I just need to define the app, which is blog, and then dot, and then go into the views. Inside the view, I've got category list. That's the name of my view. And there we go. So that now is available throughout my whole project. So let's go back into the main project and to templates and the base. So I want to make a little drop down here in the navigation bar. So again, this is a Bootstrap navigation bar. So all I need to do is make a drop down right here. So I create my drop down utilizing Bootstrap drop down facility tools. So I'm just following the Bootstrap form. So I've got a list item here. It's going to be a nav item drop down. Inside of here, I have a link, and this is categories. So this is the actual button that you'll see to click on to get the drop down to work. And then I can create a drop down. So this is my drop down menu. And inside of this is going to be all the items from a category table. So I'm going to need to make a loop because remember I'm returning all the data from the categories table, which is more than one item. So I'm going to need to loop through that and output each one. So I create a simple loop here. So category and category list. If you remember, I'm passing back to this page or to this template category list. So I'm putting all that data one by one inside of this variable called category. And each time I loop round, I'm going to get the category name, extract that out and put it where it needs to be. Now, because the category names don't have capitals, I'm using title here to capitalize the first name or capitalize the first letter, sorry. So I do that. So here you can see that I'm linking, when I output the category, obviously I want to make it into a link. And the link is going to be /category/ and then the category name. And then within my anchor tag here, I've got the category name, like I've already said. Okay, so there we go. So this is the added piece of code right there. That's going to make the drop down. If you're not too sure about Bootstrap, go ahead and have a look at the Bootstrap documentation. I've literally just followed the documentation here and you can see the different elements. It will explain it nicely for you if you've not used Bootstrap before. So let's go back into our website and refresh. Now you can see I've got the categories right here. Notice it's kind of grayed out. So let's just go back into the code. So that's because this one says active. So just to make it consistent for now. There we go. So we've got categories. There's a nice little drop down and that should now link us to our different categories. In this case, Django. And then view. And there we go. Okay, so just to finish this off, on the home page, we want to kind of output either like this or smaller icons like we have in the category. So let's just go into category I'm just going to literally copy and paste everything from there. Yep, and I go back to my index page. Just going to remove everything like that. And I just need to remember that I'm calling posts and not cat list. We don't want the cat list item there. So I remove those two things. So that should now produce a nice little grid for us on the home page. Okay, and there we go. So to recap then, we created a category list or category page facility for our blog, so we can see different categories, utilizing the name or extracting the name here and using that in a query to query the database for all items that belong in this case, the Django category or the view category, for example.